The massive training complex of the Galactic Interspecies Academy hummed with an electric anticipation. Instructor Ji-hee Park stood at the center of the circular hall, her compact frame radiating a calm confidence that seemed to make the alien students shift uncomfortably. The room was a marvel of galactic engineering. Translucent walls that shifted colors based on ambient temperature, gravity stabilizers that allowed beings from different planetary environments to coexist comfortably, and advanced holographic markers that could reconfigure the training space in seconds. 15 alien students from various star systems watched her with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. They represented some of the most promising young recruits from across the known galaxy, each unique, each wondering why a human had been selected to train them in universal physical conditioning. Garum, a blob-like creature from the methane lakes of Hydra 9, pulsed with a soft blue bioluminescence. His species typically communicated through chemical exchanges and subtle color changes, so the concept of a verbal human instructor was already challenging his understanding. Beside him, Seawan, a crystalline entity from the silicon-based worlds of the Andromeda cluster, remained perfectly still, reflecting the room's changing light in intricate patterns. Professor Hyun-ki watched from the observation deck, his datapad capturing every micro-reaction of the students. The human-alien exchange program was experimental, controversial, and potentially groundbreaking. If Ji-hye could successfully integrate her training methods with this diverse group, it could revolutionize interspecies communication and combat training. "Welcome," Ji-hye began, her voice clear and direct. She wore a standard-issue adaptive training suit that could adjust to multiple environmental conditions. The suit's smart fabric shifted from deep navy to a lighter gray as she moved, demonstrating its advanced technological capabilities. The universal translator embedded in the room's communication system worked seamlessly, converting her words into the native communication frequencies of each alien species. For Garam, this meant a series of chemical pulses. For Seawan, it translated to a complex light sequence. "Today, we begin a unique training program," she continued. Her hands moved expressively, a deliberate choice to help nonverbal species understand her communication. Physical training is more than just movement. It's about understanding coordination, teamwork, and adaptation. Ziren, a multi-limbed creature from the gravity-dense planet of Proxima Centauri, clicked his external exoskeleton in what might have been confusion or agreement. His 7 arms twitched with nervous energy, each appendage seeming to have its own independent thought process. Ji-hye understood their skepticism. Humans were relatively new to the galactic community, having only made first contact 60 years earlier. Many alien species still viewed humans as unpredictable, somewhat primitive beings who had somehow managed to develop faster-than-light travel and complex quantum technologies. What they didn't know was that humans possessed an extraordinary ability to adapt, to learn, and to transform challenges into opportunities. Ji-hye represented that spirit perfectly, a former military tactical instructor who had volunteered for this cross-species training program. She walked to an equipment rack, selecting several objects that looked both familiar and alien: soft rubber spheres of varying sizes, flexible training bands, and what appeared to be holographic projection markers. Each item represented a different potential training approach, carefully selected to challenge and engage beings with dramatically different physical capabilities. The alien students watched, their various sensory organs, some visual, some electromagnetic, some purely chemical, tracking her every movement. They were evaluating her, just as she was evaluating them. Professor Hyun-ki's datapad recorded elevated heart rates, chemical fluctuations, and subtle electromagnetic shifts among the students. Their collective emotional state was a complex tapestry of excitement, fear, curiosity, and anticipation. "We will learn together," Ji-hye said, her final statement hanging in the air like a promise. "No single species has all the answers, but together, we can discover something extraordinary." The training session was about to begin, and nobody, not the aliens, not Ji-hye, not even Professor Hyun-ki, knew exactly what would happen next. The training hall fell silent as Jihi picked up a soft rubber ball. Its surface was a muted red, designed to be visible across different visual spectrums. She bounced it lightly, demonstrating how it moved with a controlled, predictable rhythm that seemed to fascinate the alien students. "Dodgeball," she announced, her voice clear and steady, "is more than just a game. It's a test of multiple skills." Siren's 7 arms twitched with curiosity. His species was used to complex movement patterns, but this seemed different. The ball represented something more than a simple object. It was a potential weapon, a communication tool, a challenge. Garam, the blob-like creature, shifted color from blue to a pale green. His species communicated through chemical changes, and right now he was broadcasting pure confusion. The concept of throwing an object at another living being seemed counterintuitive to his peaceful nature. Seowan, the crystalline being, began to refract light through its body, creating tiny rainbow patterns that danced across the floor. This was how her species processed new information, by breaking down visual input into its most basic components. Jihye understood that each alien would perceive the game differently. For humans, dodgeball was a simple sport. For these beings, it would be a complex communication of physical and mental strategies. "The rules are simple," she explained, holding the ball up. Her movements were deliberate, designed to be clear across different sensory perceptions. "You must avoid being hit by the ball. If the ball touches you, you're out of the game." Zyron clicked his exoskeleton. His multiple arms suggested he might have an advantage. But Jihye knew that complexity didn't always mean success. She demonstrated the first throw. Her arm moved with military precision, the ball cutting through the air in a perfect arc. It missed, the practice target by mere centimeters, showing incredible control. The alien students watched, their various sensory organs working overtime. For some, the movement was a blur. For others, it was a detailed sequence of muscle tensions and release. Professor Hyun-ki observed from the control room. His data pad tracked every minute reaction. The human-alien exchange program was about to reveal something extraordinary about physical communication. "This game teaches more than just dodging," Jahi continued. "It teaches awareness, prediction, team cooperation." Garam pulsed a deep purple, a color that suggested intense concentration. His gelatinous body began to wobble slightly, mimicking the movement he had just observed. Seowan's crystalline structure vibrated at a frequency that suggested excitement. Her species processed information through light and vibration, and this game was presenting a fascinating new input. Jihye picked up another ball. This one was slightly smaller, with a different weight distribution. Each ball is different. Each throw is a unique challenge. Zyren's 7 arms began to move, practicing potential defensive positions. His multiple limbs could potentially block from different angles. But Jihye knew that strategy was more complex than simple physical capability. The room's environmental controls adjusted subtly. The gravity shifted slightly, creating a more neutral playing field for beings from different planetary conditions. The lighting changed, providing equal visibility across different visual spectrums. "We will practice," Jihye said. "We will learn. We will understand each other through this game." The alien students exchanged glances. Some looked nervous. Some looked excited. Some looked completely confused. Garam's color shifted again, this time to a bright yellow that suggested anticipation. Seowan's crystal began to spin slowly, processing the incoming information. Ziren's arms moved in a complex, synchronized dance of potential movement. The game was about to begin, and nothing would be the same after this moment. Professor Hyun-ki smiled. This was more than just a training session. This was a moment of first contact, of understanding, of breaking down barriers between species. A single rubber ball sat in the center of the room, a small, seemingly insignificant object that was about to change everything. The first whistle cut through the training hall like a laser. Instant chaos erupted. Human students moved with practiced precision. They had been training in dodgeball since childhood. Their muscles knew exactly how to twist, throw, and dodge. Each movement was calculated, smooth, almost dance-like in its Efficiency Garam, the blob-like creature, discovered quickly that his gelatinous body was both an advantage and a problem. When a ball approached, he could technically reshape himself to avoid contact. But his lack of skeletal structure meant unpredictable movements. The first ball sailed past him, creating a wind current that made his semi-liquid body wobble dramatically. He pulsed bright orange, a color representing pure panic. Ziren's 7 arms became a complex defensive system. Where other beings might see confusion, he saw opportunity. Each arm could block from a different angle, creating a living shield that moved with incredible speed. A human student named Jay targeted Ziren. His throw was precise, aimed at exploiting what he believed was a weakness. The ball curved mid-flight, a technique perfected through years of practice. But Ziren was not easily defeated. 3 of his arms moved simultaneously, creating a blocking pattern that caught the ball milliseconds before it would have touched his central body mass. Seowon, the crystalline being, discovered an unexpected talent. Her ability to refract light created momentary visual distortions. Balls seemed to bend around her, missing her transparent form by millimeters. The training hall transformed. What started as a structured exercise became a battlefield of reflexes and strategies. Alien students who moments ago looked confused now moved with surprising grace. Jihee watched, her eyes tracking multiple movements simultaneously. This was more than a game. This was a test of adaptation, of learning, of understanding fundamental physical communication. Garam discovered he could use his blob-like nature to absorb impact. When a ball hit him, instead of being eliminated, he would simply absorb and reshape around the ball. The human students looked shocked. "That's not fair," one human student shouted. Professor Hyun-Ki's datapad recorded everything: heart rates, movement patterns, chemical exchanges. Each data point told a story of interspecies interaction. Ziren's multiple arms became a whirlwind of motion. He wasn't just blocking, he was learning to throw. Each arm moved differently, creating unpredictable trajectories that confused both human and alien players. A ball struck Seowon, but instead of being eliminated, her crystalline body fractured and then instantly reconnected. The impact absorbed and redistributed across her structure. The human students realized something important. These aliens were not just playing the game. They were reimagining it. Jihee smiled. This was exactly what she had hoped would happen. Not a competition, but a conversation. A physical dialogue where each species could learn from the other. Garam's color shifted constantly. Blue with concentration, orange with excitement, green with strategic thinking. His body was a living communication device expressing emotions most species couldn't even comprehend. Ziren's coordination became hypnotic. 7 arms moving in perfect synchronization, blocking, throwing, protecting. He was creating a new form of dodgeball that no human had ever conceived. Seowon began to glow. Her crystalline structure caught the hall's light, creating complex light patterns that seemed to distract and mesmerize other players. Was this a defensive technique or a form of communication? The first match was no longer just a game. It was a revolution. Balls flew, bodies twisted. Alien and human physiology merged into a complex dance of movement and strategy. Each player was learning, adapting, transforming. Professor Hyun-Ki knew they were witnessing something extraordinary. This was more than physical training. This was the future of interspecies understanding. As the match continued, the lines between players blurred. Humans, aliens, these were no longer separate categories. They were simply beings, learning, growing, playing together. The first whistle had started something remarkable, and nobody, not Jihee, not the students, not Professor Hyun-Ki, could have predicted where this would lead. The game evolved. What began as a simple dodgeball match transformed into a complex battlefield of biological innovation. Garam discovered his most unexpected talent. His gelatinous body could now split into multiple smaller sections, creating living dodging mechanisms that defied traditional physics. Where a human might jump, Garam would simply separate, allowing balls to pass harmlessly through his liquid form. Ziren's 7 arms developed a communication system all their own. Each arm began to work with near-sentient independence, creating defensive patterns that looked more like an advanced martial art than a simple game. 3 arms would block while 2 would prepare to throw, 1 would scout the field, and another would protect teammates. Xiaowan's crystalline structure became something extraordinary. She learned to create light refractions that acted as temporary force fields. Incoming balls would suddenly change trajectory, confused by the complex light patterns she generated. The human students found themselves completely outmatched. Their lifetime of dodgeball training meant nothing against these alien adaptations. Jay, who had been the top player in his human training group, now watched in absolute amazement. Professor Hyun Ki's datapad was working overtime. Each movement was a scientific breakthrough. This was more than a game. This was evolution in real time. Jahi understood something profound was happening. These aliens weren't just playing dodgeball. They were reinventing the entire concept of physical interaction. Garam developed a technique of molecular redistribution. When a ball approached, he could instantly change his density, solid one moment, liquid the next. The human players looked confused and frustrated. How is that even possible? One human student shouted, watching a ball pass completely through Garam's body. Ziren's strategic thinking reached new heights. He began to coordinate with other alien players, creating complex defensive formations that looked more like advanced military maneuvers than a simple game. One of his arms would create a distraction, while another would protect teammates. The coordination was so precise it seemed almost telepathic. Xiaowan discovered she could use her crystalline structure to create sound waves. These waves would momentarily disorient human players, creating split-second advantages that completely changed the game's dynamics. The training hall transformed. What started as a structured exercise became a laboratory of biological adaptation. Each species was learning, changing, growing. Human players who once dominated now found themselves completely outmaneuvered. Their traditional strategies meant nothing against these alien adaptations. Garam's body could now split into multiple smaller sections, creating living dodging mechanisms that seemed to defy the basic laws of physics. Where a human might jump, Garam would simply separate, allowing balls to pass harmlessly through his liquid form. Jihi watched with a mixture of professional pride and scientific fascination. This was exactly why she had pushed for this cross-species training program, not to compete, but to learn. Professor Hyun Ki's calculations showed something remarkable. The alien players were developing new strategies faster than any known biological system could typically adapt. It was as if the game itself was teaching them, evolving them in real time. The room's environmental controls seemed to respond to the players' movements. Gravity shifted slightly. Lighting changed. The entire training hall became a living, breathing organism of learning and adaptation. Ziren's 7 arms moved with such precision that they looked like a single, complex organism. Each arm had its own purpose, its own strategy, yet worked in perfect harmony with the others. Xiaowan's light refractions became more complex. She wasn't just blocking balls now. She was communicating through light patterns that seemed to convey entire strategic concepts. The human players realized something fundamental had changed. This was no longer a competition. This was a conversation. A dialogue of movement, strategy, and biological potential. As the match continued, the boundaries between species blurred. Humans, aliens, these were no longer separate categories. They were simply beings, learning, growing, adapting together. Something extraordinary was happening, and nobody could predict where it would lead. The training session ended, but its impact would echo through galactic history. What began as a simple dodgeball game had transformed into something far more significant. The alien students looked different, more confident, more connected, more understanding of each other and their human instructors. Garam, once a trembling blob of uncertainty, now pulsed with a confident deep blue color. His molecular structure had learned something profound about adaptation and teamwork. Where he once feared interaction, he now embraced complexity. Ziren's 7 arms moved with a new purpose. The coordination they had developed during the game wasn't just a physical skill, it was a new form of communication. Each arm now represented a different aspect of collective thinking, a living demonstration of unified strategy. Seowan's crystalline structure now reflected more than just light. It captured the essence of learning, of transformation. Her ability to refract and redirect had become a metaphor for cultural understanding. Professor Hyun-Ki's datapad showed something unprecedented. The biological and psychological changes in the students were more significant than any previous cross-species training program had ever achieved. Ji-hye stood at the center of the training hall, watching her students. She had come here to teach a simple game. Instead, she had sparked a cultural revolution. The other academy instructors gathered around the observation deck, watching in disbelief. What they witnessed was more than a training session. It was a moment of galactic significance. "This changes everything," Professor Hyun-Ki muttered, his fingers dancing across the datapad's interface. The alien students began to interact differently. Garam, who could barely communicate before, now used his color-changing abilities to share complex emotional states. Ziren's arms moved in synchronized patterns that conveyed more information than words ever could. Seowan started creating intricate, light patterns that seemed to tell stories, complex narratives of cooperation, of understanding, of breaking through biological limitations. The human students who had entered the session as confident athletes now looked humbled. They had learned that physical skill was just the beginning of true communication. Ji-hye understood they had created something more than a training method. This was a new language of interaction, a way for different species to understand each other beyond verbal communication. The Academy's communication protocols would need complete redesign. What they had discovered went beyond simple physical training. This was a new form of interspecies dialogue. Professor Hyun-Ki's report would change galactic diplomacy. The simple act of playing dodgeball had revealed more about potential cooperation than centuries of diplomatic negotiations. Garam discovered he could now communicate with Ziren through molecular vibrations. Seowan could translate complex, emotional states through light patterns. The human students learned to read these new communication methods. The training hall itself seemed to breathe with new potential. The walls, which had once been simple barriers, now felt like living membranes of understanding and possibility. "We are no longer just different species," Ji-hye announced to the group. "We are a single learning organism." The alien students looked at her. No translation was needed. They understood completely. Professor Hyun-Ki knew the Galactic Council would be fascinated. This was more than a training experiment. This was a breakthrough in understanding how different biological systems could communicate and cooperate. Ziren's arms moved in a pattern that seemed to embrace all the other students. Garam pulsed with colors that represented joy and discovery. Seowan's crystal structure vibrated with a frequency of pure potential. The human students stood slightly back, realizing they had been part of something much larger than themselves. They had not just played a game, they had participated in a moment of galactic significance. As the students prepared to leave, something had fundamentally changed. The barriers between species seemed to dissolve. They were no longer just different beings from different planets. They were something new, something united. The first whistle of the dodgeball game had started a revolution, and nobody could predict where it would lead.